quickly, obviously, keep learning. It's before I actually kick off. Really, what I want to say is, I was just talking to my friend at the back there who's controlling all the things that's happening here, and we were talking about the different forms of learning and how you can learn all the time, it's continuous, etc. So that's really what I'm going to be talking about. It's about us building environments to help people learn and not using them to stifle people. Yeah, so here we go. Okay, so why keep learning? What's important about it? Why are we saying we should keep learning? And the fact, it's not cute. Sorry. I was running ahead of this.
I've paused the projector, sorry.
Ah,
Sorry.
no worry. Okay. So why is it important? Why is it necessary for us to keep learning? Our speed of need, which is we need information now, we need to know things when we need to know them, as against the earlier practice of actually learning stuff, carrying it around our heads and trying to pull it up at the right time. So what we're saying is this has changed dramatically in the last 5 years. Technology has helped, hasn't helped. It gives us access. It's there quickly. But it's also given us a hell of a lot more. There's so much more information than we ever needed. And lastly, of course, it's unavoidable. You can't actually stop learning, as much as you try. I'm going to be talking a lot about Dan Pontefract. He's written this book, and in this he's saying that I think the important things here are it's collaborative. So we learn from one another, we learn from experience, we learn from different things. It's continuous, it's connected, and I think critically there is an element of community now which we never had earlier, where we learned individually. Today you're learning as a community, you're learning from one another, we're learning through one another, and I think that's the important thing. So it's a mindset, it's a culture, it's an ethos, but it's something that we've actually done all the time and we continue to do. Says who? This is all very well, but some examples. Robert the Bruce, he watched this spider try time and time again, and that gave him the impetus to go back and do what he had to do. Or was it the spider? Everybody talks about Robert the Bruce, but the spider did it 6 times before he got it right. Sarah Caldwell, who's an opera composer and conductor, says a very important thing about learn everything you can from anyone, anytime, because you never know when you're going to use it. And I think this whole process of being connected, of being continuous, is really embodied in this saying, learn it now, because A, you never know when you're going to need it, but B, it's something that you are actually imbibing all the time. At 87, after doing all the things he did, Michelangelo still said he was learning. It doesn't stop. And I think this might resonate with a few of us, given the kind of weather we've had over the last couple of months. But nothing stops learning. Henry Ford said, it doesn't matter how old you are. If you stop, you'll be old. I'm not going to risk asking, are there any old people in the room? But again, I think these are just indications of this is recognition of the fact that learning is continuous. It's something we continue to do. So, what did you learn today? Can you think back in the last half an hour, 1 hour, of something new that you picked up? It may have been something that you read, it may have been something that you heard, it may have been the next seminar theater or this one. So if you can think about what exactly did you learn today, and I'm just going to go back to a classic of the parent asks the child, what did you learn today? I think we all have those moments. A lot of it happens in work, in the classroom, and you're saying, yeah, that was great, but what did we actually learn? So I think if you recognize that there is a process that is taking place continuously, and you look around and you say, actually, I learned something new today by doing this, or by seeing something, which raises the question of where did it happen? Does it need to happen in a place? Does it need to be at a particular time? It's not. It's something that you're doing all the time. When did you learn? Again, is it something you can put a finger on? Yes, you can if it's formal. If you went to a classroom or a seminar like this, then you can ascribe a time to it. But otherwise, sometimes it just comes back to you, and you say, when did I pick that up? Where did I learn that? And it's there, and it registers in the subconscious. And why? You can ascribe why when you set out to do something, but it's not always that you set out to do something. So I think these are some of the areas of A, learning is continuous, A, we're surrounded by it, and it's a process which you will continue to go through consciously and subconsciously. And then how? What was the way you actually learned? Was it by listening to somebody? By taking a photograph of the slide? These are all the various things that go on continuously around what we do and what we are involved in. That's how you learn. And I think it's recognition of all these factors that gives us this ability to keep learning. We call it pervasive learning. And if you look up the meaning of pervasive in the dictionary, there is a bit of a sinister angle to it as well. But this is innocent. It's all about we're surrounded by it. This could be, and this is a concept of a windshield in a car in the future, where everything is displayed on your screen. Everything that you didn't want to know or didn't need to know because you forgot about the car in front of you. But this is the kind of knowledge that is going to be is already available to us, and it's going to be much worse. So what is it? What is pervasive learning? It doesn't come in a box. There's no packaging. Some of it is in the LMS. It needs to be. That's the formal aspect of it. But it's not all our learning comes in a box. It comes in different forms. It comes in a presentation like this. It comes in the notes you're making. It comes in what you heard on the radio this morning or what you saw on television or a film. So there's no form for pervasive learning. It's just there. Whoops. Excuse me. Yeah.
That's all right. That's fine.
I'll keep it there.
That's all right. Cool. Go on.
There. I learned something new. I should have tucked it in tighter. So back to pervasive learning. So it's omnipresent. It's there all the time. It's continuous. We can't avoid it. Where does it happen? Where does it happen? If this stays here, yeah. Like I said, it happens anywhere, everywhere, all the time. How does it happen? Again, there is myriad forms. It's media, it's conversation, it's discussion, it's observation. It's all of this put together, which combines to give you the experience of continuous learning. And this is the environment in which we live. Now, if you take, this is my theory, okay? It happens like we teach our kids through the five senses, through listening or hearing or watching something. And for all of us foodies, it's about smell and taste as well. And it teaches you what is nice, what is pleasant, etc., etc. And this is some of the more organized forms of how we learn. These are the kind of things that take place in our lives on a regular basis, at work, at home. It's something that you're doing all the time. So whether it's reading, whether it's discussing with somebody, but these are all the inputs you get into your learning. And again, leading back to, this is the way we keep learning, this is why it's important to keep learning, and this is the methodology of it. If you look at the technology ecosystem, this is what you're surrounded by. And technology is a great enabler, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But this is about, given the fact that you're surrounded by this all the time, even now, this is one of the greatest enablers of this whole process that allows us to continue and to keep learning. Sorry. And it all links together again, obviously, to form pervasive learning. And again, my friend Don, he defines is that learning at the speed of need, which we talked about earlier in terms of how important it is to have information, resources, knowledge, information at that particular point of need when you want to know something. And we'll talk about the 5 moments a little later, but it's through form. It's a combination of all the aspects. It's a combination of what we've called formal, informal, social. All of these labels put together is really what we call pervasive learning. He illustrates it in a model which looks like this. So you've got 3 elements of it, the formal, and these are all the activities that happen within that. So for it to be truly pervasive, you should have elements across all of these in the mix. And for those of us who are tasked with disseminating training, planning training, designing training, delivering training, and for those of us who are receiving it as well, these are the channels by which you can use this. This is by which, if you create an environment like this, your people will learn, he says confidently. The model that I just showed you is based on his presentation saying that pervasive learning is split into 3 equal parts. That's the formal, informal, and social, which is why he had that diagram. Then we've got the famous 70-20-10, which is, again, I'm sure everybody's familiar with. But the fact is that you look at 90% of this, or 66, depending on which model you look at, is formal and informal. So again, it is taking place in that environment which is outside the norm, which is outside classrooms, which is outside workshops. And the question we're posing today is, are we doing enough to actually facilitate that and to see whether we're giving enough emphasis in our entire planning to those aspects which lie outside? I suspect not. So therefore, you do need a conducive environment. You need to create a conducive environment. That will then present learning opportunities, or more learning opportunities, which will then give you a pervasive learning environment and a pervasive learning culture. So given all this, obviously you could end up very easily saying, where do I go? How do I manage all of this? And I've just picked up some of these challenges. Right at the bottom, we're saying the speed of change, and we all know that, whether it's technology, whether it's legislation, whether it's information, the speed at which this is changing is huge. The volume of information that we're currently dealing with, again, and it's a function of how much information, where am I getting it from? The sources of information you have available to you are fantastic. They're great, but what about the authority of that information? We've all got so used to going into Google, Googling something, you get the information, you say, fantastic. Is it right? How do we validate that information? How do we know that's the best form? We've seen examples of that in Wikipedia. I love Wikipedia. It's my first protocol after Google. But I'm not really sure now, after this presentation for certain, whether that's the best information available to me. So it's one of the challenges of the process. It's easy to get wrapped up in technology. Given the amount of information we have, sometimes the easiest part is just to turn it off. Yeah? So it's one of the simplest solutions I've ever given for too much information. The people we're dealing with, us ourselves included, are used to sourcing our own materials. We're used to going out and looking for stuff. We're not waiting for somebody to say, here's a workbook, here's some information on this. We're into Google, we're looking it up immediately. We're taking this information and then sharing it, because that's what social media does. You're on Twitter, you're on LinkedIn, you're in all of that. And you take this information, the willingness to share is much more than it has ever been. It's also a great place to learn. It's also somewhere where you can go and find out other people's experiences. So information sharing, collaboration have become very, very important to us. But how do we actually capture this? Is there a mechanism in the organization to capture this kind of learning? Probably not. It's all anecdotal, it's war stories, it's experiences, which is not being recorded. And there's an opportunity for valuable learning to be lost. We can never measure this to see how the organization, how the individuals have actually grown from this. Has it influenced the work? Has it influenced productivity? Do they do things better? Are they better at doing things? And then how do we manage this? Is there an element of control that we've lost by doing this? But it's not. It's equally important to continue to facilitate and enable this as it is to manage it. And is the management about the learning, or is the management about managing the environment that you're creating for people to learn? This is the learning environment we live in today. If you look at Dan's model, we're doing some of it. And even from that, there are pieces of it that we use. And obviously we will use platforms like the LMS to deliver it. But again, we're doing some of it, and everybody's doing bits and pieces of it, but it's not actually connected into a single solution. It's not an environment that has been created to deliver this kind of learning. We've added things on as we've gone along because they're there. And there are challenges of technology, there are challenges of security, it's everything else, but that's currently where we are. Whereas this is actually our learning environments today. And this is the shameless plug part of it, but this is LinkedIn and the collaboration and the sharing. Slide share. And I'm hoping all of you will go and look at the slides I put up after I finish this one. But these are all various areas that we're going and bringing our information in individually. This is not being done on an enterprise level. This is being done sporadically by different people based on their moment of need. But this is where we will go first. So if we go to tomorrow's learning environment, which is taking Dan's model and adapting it all, but if we put a layer around it and bring in all the tools that people are using anyway, the collaboration tools, the sharing tools, the knowledge tools, if we combine all of this, then you potentially have a truly pervasive learning environment. And I think, obviously, you can't do all of this, and there are challenges to doing this in itself. But I think there's recognition of the fact that learning exists outside the norm, and I think our roles, or what we're saying today, is to enable people to keep learning. We need to provide this. We need to create the environment. We need to manage this as an environment as against managing the learning. So how do we enable it? Let me pause and have a quick sip of water, if you don't mind. So there are four components to enabling this pervasive thing. You've got people, you've got the content, you've got technology, obviously, key part. And the bottom right, you've got opportunity. Because it's also about creating opportunity. And I think that's a big area where we tend to think technology will provide that opportunity, or we rely on technology to provide it. But if you look at opportunity as a component in itself, you need to factor that into every of the other three quadrants as well. So let's look at the people we're dealing with, because these are critical to, obviously, the environment and the culture. They're very tech savvy today. They know their stuff. They're using it all the time. They're point of need driven. We don't carry as much information around in our heads anymore because you've got it in your phone. You can pull it up when you want it. We all have very high expectations of technology. We expect technology to do a lot more for us and are depending on technology a lot more to do things for us. We have a very low tolerance level when it doesn't work. Have you ever been on holiday and the Wi-Fi hasn't worked? It's one of the most isolating experiences. I was without internet for 9 days on a holiday recently. Facebook missed me hugely. But that's the world we live in now. We expect to control this technology. And I don't know who wins the battle of the remote control at home, but it's all about control. Your phone is set up the way you want it set up. Everybody's phones are different. But importantly, we have the ability to do that. And it's become an expectation that I want to be able to do. If you use Google all the time, you've got an iGoogle page which is set up for you. Because those are the things you're interested in. The front screen on my phone is set up for what I look at the first thing in the morning. So we expect to be in control of it. As I said, we expect to be able to customize it as well. So it's individual, it's personal. We all have our own networks. I'm really making a hash of this, aren't I? We've all got our independent networks, whether they're on LinkedIn, whether they're on Facebook, whether they're at work. They may be physical, they may be over the net, but we're all independent networkers. Again, we collaborate and share freely within this network. That's where we go to find out things. That's where we look up stuff to say, has somebody else had the same problem I've had? Can you help? And these networks cut across both professional and personal. So you will find, colleagues at work will become personal friends. And the interaction with them is two different things. Some is work-related, some isn't. How many people have got more than one device on them now? A lot, yeah. We've become used to this. And the way we use things will vary on why you and what you perceive that device to give you. Content, key. We want it easily accessed. We want it searchable. We want to be able to find what we want at that point of need. It's about control. It's about customizable. More and more, we are seeing content as being shorter, quicker, faster, and easier to digest. And again, relevant and useful, again, back to that point of need. And my own theory is phones have done this to us, because we will look at the headline now. When you want to learn something, you pull it up, and you say, oh, that's what it means, fine. And you leave it at that. You don't want the whole 60 minutes of it. Relevant to why I pulled it up in the first place. So aligned to my point of need. It's got to be practical. There is an element of knowledge, there is an element of learning, but how can I take it and use it? Tell me how to use it, as much as tell me about it. So we've gone to that extra level of saying, this is great information, but what do I do with it? Whereas earlier we delivered the information and left it to the individual to figure out how to use it. So we're looking now to being taught how to apply it as well. We also need to include what I call contributory content, which is user-generated, so built by users, built by people within an organization, within a network, contributory, because of the networking on LinkedIn and the groups we follow and everything else. We're used to seeing content from other people, but we're not taking this, embracing, capturing it, and using it, and delivering it back. Again, it's a very individual process. And the wonder word which we all use, it must be engaging, it must be fun. So content is, all of this, and it's important we get it right. And if I just show you a quick quote, this was by the Ministry of Education, British Columbia. And if you focus on, it's not about learning the information, but learning the skills to find, to consume, to apply. I should end my presentation here because this is what enables you to keep learning. It's about teaching your people the skills to do this. Where can they go and find it? What can they do with it? I'm going to have to run now because I've run out of time. But in technology, which is the third component, again, it's about access, it's about sharing, it's about the networks. We need to be able to provide or enable our technology to deliver this. The big man himself said, it's about curiosity. It's about wanting to learn. It's about finding out. And more we're doing that because we have the ability to do it. We have the ability to do it because the environment which we live allows us to do it. These are the building blocks to enabling this. Creating learning experiences which are outside the norm, which allows people a wider view of what you're trying to, what the training or what the information is. Collaboration, finding out from one another how they did it. We've talked about this for many, many years, about war stories and capturing this. Anecdotal learning. Are we actually doing that and sending back out? Again, content. Relevant and context to need. Our roles are now more about facilitating and enabling. It's not about management. It's not about what you need to know. It's about where you can find it. This is an authoritative source. Have a look at this. It's about providing that context. Obviously, exploiting technology, using phones, tablets, all the other devices which we're carrying to deliver what we're used to, but using it to push as well. But encouraging our people to pull information as well, pull the education from that, pull the learning from that. And breaking down silos of information. Again, going back to collaboration sharing. There's lots of information in different pockets, typically in an organization. How do you actually bring that into the mainstream? How do you get people to exchange that so we can all benefit from it? Culture, behavior of the organization, recognition of that people will learn differently based on their work roles. Finance versus sales. I won't say any more. Again, the collaboration in using, a lot of what we do is we're unable to share because we don't have the ability to do that. It's not an expensive exercise. We're all using it in our personal lives. There's Skype, there's instant messages, there's chat. If we allow this, there will be a greater exchange of ideas, and you're building an environment which allows this. You need participation. Again, going back to contributory content, you need to capture learning from within the organization, from within people, and put that back out there as well. And are you capturing best practice? Always a question. But critically, please remember that your learners are in a permanent state of learning. We're not just learners at that point of time. We're learners all the time. This is Dr. Conrad Gottfredson's model of the 5 moments of need. If you look at the top, these are typically what you find as when you want to learn something the first time, when you want to remember something, when something goes wrong. And what I've tried to do under that is map typically where you would go, what you would look for, what is the kind of behavior you would do to actually try and facilitate that. And at the bottom, what is the technology you could possibly use to do that? There's lots of overlap, there's lots of things. But I think it's important to recognize that at that point of time, what would you pull out? When you came out of a tube station, would you pull out your PC for the tube map? No, you pull out your phone. So I guess it's all about putting these, pieces together to do this. Do we do it? In our workplace. We're doing it at home. We do a lot of this in the workplace. But to create this environment, to create this culture, to facilitate this, these are some of the things we need to do. These are some of the questions we need to answer and ask ourselves. And critically, put that L plate out there, because you don't stop being a learner. We must create these universities, these libraries of learning. We must give our people access to them. We must encourage them to walk through these corridors. We must be catalysts, and we must be the tour guides to direct, guide, and ensure that we keep learning to keep learning. And that's my quote. I should have put my picture up there as well. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions now, or I'm stand 112 if you need to come and see me. Okay? Thank you.